Hello there. So, more than ever, I would argue, the world is obsessed with politics. But honestly, just ask yourself, how much your voice really matters? What is really the return on investment here? And the only ground I'm possibly willing to concede is that you spend maybe 1 or 2 hours voting every 4 or 5 years, right? But even that is not gonna be positive when it comes to your time, especially considering the other variables that you're most likely gonna stay informed. And largely, what I see is that people vote for what the politicians say / promise instead of what they did, if they had any experience before. But let's just say that they did, because promising is easy. But my angle is truly not to evaluate the finer points of how to pick better, but at the very least, you should be picking for what they actually do, right? Because you can have the one guy who says the best things and the guy who says also the best things. And like, you know what they do. You kind of hate them both. So now who do you pick? Well, you can say that no one. And in a way, you stop giving legitimacy to this show. But most likely that will not really matter. And it's been said before that voting is not a tool of change, but a ritual of consent. Yet, I don't even care about that. My point is that it is not positive return on investment, especially because people spend so much extra time on just getting informed, or maybe having a camp. Like, I'm with those guys. I probably should not really pick any camps. It could be any camp, truly. It really doesn't matter. Like, I have the right opinions. Everyone else who doesn't have my opinion is stupid. And my opinion should be enforced on everyone else. Sounds like someone you know? Also, most likely, the state is not going to save you. So that's not really a good mindset to have. That you vote for the right kind of state and they are going to save you. At most, they would give you some kind of help and subsistence, but maybe even that for not long, because the demographics are not looking that good, right? So unless robots and AI will take over, then yeah, you are on your own. But let's analyze and let's consider a more of a common case these days, that you have a person who's maybe spending hundreds of hours per year on just getting informed, or just keeping up and like sticking around with their team, and then like voting super hard. At that point, they're not even a rational voter, right? They're not even voting for something that's good for them, but for their tribe, for their team. But most of all, who cares, right? Let's say that you live in a country, right? And you have your money, you can vote with that. You have your feet, you can vote with that. Ideally, you should try to buy feet if you don't have it. And what if the country goes really bad, right? Can you really change that with your one vote? Doubtful. So truly, in this case, the best solution would be to have more money or just leaving, right? Now, is this ideal? I don't care, but it would be your best option by far. We can only talk about playing the politics game if you are some kind of a rich person who is really, in a way, buying votes, right? You're just making ads, or maybe you own some influencers, or maybe you're just funnel money to some influencers on maybe YouTube or the news media, whatever, and you get people to vote your way. In a way, that would be actually better return on investment than possibly even voting yourself. But unless you're the top 1% of the 1%, this really should not be even begin to be a consideration. And even then, who gives a fuck? You can just leave, right? Why spend money trying to change things in a way that you deem to be better, but it may not be, and who knows? That guy might just do whatever. And that really needs to be emphasized here, that are you really getting what you're voting for? Because let's say that you vote for someone who you deem to be the least bad option, right? Because you're not picking what you like, what you deem to be the best, but the least bad option. That's always the reality. Yet, what this guy does, What are they gonna do? They're just gonna constantly talk about stuff that doesn't matter, right? Just try to keep the people bamboozled. Maybe do some austerity. Maybe start a war or something. Maybe screw you over while benefiting others. Whatever, right? It doesn't matter. The point is, you're not really paying. I mean, you're getting what you're paying for. Simply said, you just have a guy who just says whatever to get elected and then does whatever benefits them the most. Not the country, not you, but themselves. That is politics. Not sure, they might have some buddies and those who really funneled their rights there. It wasn't your vote, I can tell you that. But also fundamentally, why do you care about all of this? It makes no sense. You're just wasting your time. It really does not matter what is said, how is it said, because everything just stands for personal power. If you disagree, you can just send me your money. Because people just want to have it better than their fellas and want what they want to be enforced on them. And just to be clear, my take is that you should not vote. Partly because in what country you're really eligible to vote in? Just think about it. The one you spawned in. But does that really matter that much? This might encourage some kind of an irrational commitment. It's like, okay, I just keep voting here. I feel like an owner of this country or whatever. But ultimately, if things could be better for you somewhere else, that would be more rational for you. And even though the state does not seem to care that much, but what people are actually voting for, they tend to vote for, almost every single time, is that they have it better than their fellas. So the state kind of screws you over and kind of uplifts them a little bit on their behalf, right? Now, I'm not disregarding this because this is perfectly self-enhancing, I suppose. But also a bit of a joke, especially like now that the birth rate is lower, what's going to happen, right? Those who are older, what are they going to vote? Well, they're going to vote the same thing that they always vote. More money for me, right? And especially if you're a young guy, you should have no confusions. Because what is your purpose? You make money for the old people. You make money possibly for your own kids if you can afford them. You make money for other people's kids. Of course, you make money for the rich too. And politically privileged. And if you're very, very lucky, then perhaps you get to buy a shovel at the end so you can dig a ditch with it and just jump in. Because you're definitely not going to be supported. Yet, how could you justify such an act? You can't. The game is just take as much as you can. That doesn't make people leave, hopefully, maybe. But also it's needless to explore the finer details here. But I'm mainly critiquing the focus of people. That seemingly the average Joe is obsessed with politics. At least the internet is, right? It's so much so that unless living under a rock, you're probably gonna be involved in politics. And the game is clearly not worth your time, and clearly not worth your investment into whatever group. Because if you pick your group, right? You really picked your group. You know the right group, right? You're just gonna pick them every time. But then it's kind of pointless, right? If you're ever wondering what they're up to, and you possibly feel a little ignorant, then I can assure you that they are just doing something that fucks you over for their ends. Simple as that. If that is not to be the case, they can just send me their money. In fact, if you look at the world and people, not based on what they say, claim, believe, promise, even show, right? But what they actually do, then it's a completely different game. It is usually just blah blah, try to get some money, blah blah, try to get others to do what you want, blah blah, get others internalize what you want. Blah blah, make promises and try to get their money. I mean, the blah blah and get money is very popular one, no doubt. Blah blah and get yourself into a position of power. That's a good one too. And the important part here is that the blah blah doesn't matter, right? In fact, they're just gonna say a more promising one. Maybe it's for equality and for the children and for the love of mankind and humanity, and they love you so much. And everyone's gonna get like $100,000 UBI or whatever, man. My point is, it does not fucking matter. You can say anything. You can promise anything. You can claim anything. You can even believe in it. And this is what you see in people, that they actually fully believe in it. They believe that they are an agent of good or whatever that is. Albeit you don't see inside their head, but if the situation changed, then, maybe that's an exception. Or, I just had to do it. Or maybe others made me do it or whatever. Either it doesn't matter. Or they find the money. I really deserve this, man. Also, perhaps a bit of an odd take to some of you, but also you can look at people and let's say that they have a lot of money. And when it comes to these people, shouldn't you be picking those who have some kind of a servant mindset, right? Because if they are rich and they're looking to get richer, or possibly even billionaires, I'm not saying that others are good, but they clearly don't give a fuck about you. They've proven it over a billion times. And I'm not even claiming that they have to give away their money, but this would be something that perhaps would disqualify you from some a service role. But apparently it's not like that at all, because, having a top role or just some kind of service role is just a golden ticket to get rich. That's how it goes. And you would think to yourself that, oh yeah, that selfish hypocrite with the golden palace, that is the guy that would help me. And the thing is, if you took someone who's poorer, they would be like, oh yeah, this money? Yeah, that sounds about right. I'll take this money too. Sounds good to me. Now, you might be better off. So that's not entirely my point. My point is that they're not there to help you, but to help themselves. And would not think twice about doing so. In fact, that is likely why they're going there. And if you think that they don't care about you, you would be mistaken, because they do care about you a lot, what they can get from you. And that is the extent of it. But also the regular Joe does this too. They vote so they get to have better lives. Self-evident, really. And perfectly self-enhancing. But also not really good return on investment in any way you calculate it. And ultimately, whether they have your back is to be proven. But even then, you cannot be that grateful, because if they just take money from your pocket and try to give you some back, that's not exactly generous.